everybody, and welcome to another disclosure in the media, Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim. And we
Thank you
have
for
Ryan back today to talk about the Elder Scrolls lore, and we're going to do a
well,
comparison between the Dragonborn and what you call Firebrand DNA. It's essentially the same concepts. And if there's time, we'll add in some of the political stuff that is actually mirrored kind of in the current moment. So, Ryan, I'm going to let you take it away first.
Okay, Skyrim is the fifth game in the Elder Scrolls series that we've been going through chronologically and diving deep into the lore to show galactic history. Skyrim takes place in the north of Tamriel, here in the mountainous region of Skyrim, which is why it gets its name, because there's so many mountains and it's basically the rim of the sky. Skyrim is the home to the Nords, basically like a Viking Moldakian people. So that's the actual province of Skyrim. And you start the game down here in Helgen as a prisoner. Gonna get your head cut off. Doesn't work because the dragon Alduin comes in and causes a lot of damage. Destroys the entire town. You escape with whatever side you want to. Either the Empire or the Stormcloaks, which are like a political factions that we will talk about a little bit later on in the video. And you make your way down to Riverwood and then to Whiterun, where they send you to get a stone from an ancient ruin of dragon-worshipping early Nords around here at Bleak Falls Barrow. You get the stone and you bring it to a wizard who translates it, and basically it's all about, it makes a map of dragon mound burials where like dragons were buried after the humans revolted against them. Well, at the same time, now dragons are coming back, so people are like, well, yeah, we kind of need to know everything we can about dragons. So they were thinking about excavating a dragon mound to see like what their anatomy was. And then they get like this alarm that there's a dragon that's been sighted circling the city in like this area. So you and a group of the town guard go right here and you kill it, and you absorb its power. And when you kill it, its entire like life force gets drained with it, and its soul, and it goes right into you, and that's what outs you as the Dragonborn, or a Dovahkiin in the dragon's tongue, which basically just means immortal, like a person in immortal form with the blood and soul of a dragon in its entirety. So prior in these games' history, Dragonborns have started empires, but you're the first one to appear in, I think, 700 to 900 years by this point, and it's kind of a big deal. So, and it's clearly linked with the fact that the dragons are coming back. So that's what the Dovahkiin is said to look like in the lore. A Nordic male with brown hair and short facial hair in that essential armor. The reason why now, like, and it's almost instant that you're recognized as the Dovahkiin, because the Greybeards, a group of monks that live at the top of the highest mountain in the world, basically call you out and are like, come train with us, because they use the power of dragons that was gifted to man when the dragons were oppressing them. And the power that I'm referring to is called the Thu'um, which is basically dragons' words are magically imbued. And so if you speak them as a dragon speaks them, and you have a fully understanding knowledge of the word, you project the magical effect associated with it. So you can do this inherently because you are Dragonborn. You already have the knowledge and you have the ability because you're a dragon. Normal people can do it after like millennia of study. It took years for these people to get to the point where they can like use these words to produce magical effects. And it's explained when you get up there that they do it for like religious reverence and to like honor nature, but you're not bound by their rules because you are not one of them, and you are essentially just a dragon that isn't a human body. so they train you a little bit, and then they send you off to find the horn of their like order's founder just to test you. But the Blades have already taken it. The Blades are the other faction that kind of like works for and with the Dragonborn, and they actually were the guards of the Dragonborn emperors in the past, and went out of their way to find you now because the few of them left after previous events in the time between Oblivion and Skyrim, they were hunted pretty much. They want to serve you because their duty is not to the Emperor, their duty is to whoever is the wielder of the dragon's blood, regardless of what form it takes. So you return to Hrothgar and go with the horn that the Blades agent gave you after you met them, and then you meet the Blades agent somewhere else. But you go to Hrothgar, you give them the horn, and they teach you they finish your teachings of the first like major shout that you have, the Unrelenting Force shout, which if you ever watch any of the Skyrim trailer or anything, it's when he goes Fusruda, and then basically what it does is it blows people off their feet. It's super powerful, and it's kind of the most useful shout in the game. Yeah, so that's Hrothgar, where the followers of the Way of the Voice, the Greybeards, stay up at the top of the highest mountain. This is one of the Blades, and from here on, for the next little bit, you work with one of the last members of the Blades, Delphine, to infiltrate the Thalmor embassy, because she thinks that the Thalmor, her order has been in conflict with for like the last 30 years, have something to do with the dragons coming back. And the Thalmor are very arrogant uncreationists that like want to discreate themselves. And maybe me and Chris can go into that a little later, and Aurora can go into that a little later, because it's kind of a really weird dichotomy and needs a lot of explaining. So soon after you infiltrate, that's one of the Thalmor people, and that's actually their leader, Elenwyn, in the area. And she is kind of ticked off when you break in unannounced during one of her parties. You sneak in as a party guest, and you kind of just destroy the place to find out if they have any information on the dragons, which they don't, but they have information on one of the last remaining Blades, who they believe is hiding out in the sewers underneath the city of Riften, which is the city way down here with the crossed swords as its thing, right on that lake in the bottom right. So you go there and you find Eastburn, who is like the Blade's old catalogist. He knew their library better than anyone and saved a few of their books. And he tells you that we need to find Alduin's Wall, which is in a very significant area where ancient history was recorded by the ancient Blades. So you guys go and where is it? There. You guys find this inside the Ancient Blades Temple. And this is a series of carvings that depict the prophecy of the Dragonborn and Alduin. So this prophecy states that the dragons would rule for a time, and the tongues, so 3 ancient heroes, would cast Alduin forward in time. Alduin is the chief dragon and the one that is also the World Eater. Alduin's return heralds pretty much the end of the world. And you're the only one that can pretty much do anything about it, because you're the only one that is able to, based on this prophecy. So the Ancient Blades actually sent Alduin forward in time with the use of an Elder Scroll artifact, a very powerful, magical, outside of creation artifact that basically sent him forward in time unintentionally. They were trying to cast him out of creation. It didn't work, and it just sent him forward into time. So, but the Ancient Blades were able to record kind of when Alduin would come out. So what we have in this panel here is the idea of when Alduin will return. So this means after the Brass Tower is awakened, referring to the events of the Elder Scrolls 2 Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, when the brass god Numidium is reactivated. This symbol deals with the Oblivion Crisis that has to do with the doors of Oblivion opening at the end of the Third Era and the main events of the game Oblivion. And then these like three guys down here with their swords raised has to do with when the Sons of Skyrim would spill their own blood, because currently as this game is going on, there's also a civil war going on in Skyrim, and the Imperials and the Stormcloaks are fighting for control of the province. And it's the Skyrim Imperial Legion, so mostly Nords, and the Stormcloak rebels, who are only Nords, and they're spilling each other's blood. Alduin comes out of his time fracture, and this panel here depicts the Dragonborn and Alduin going at it and fighting. And it's quickly decided that that's kind of what has to happen. So you have to get good. That's kind of how it's explained. So you need to get the Dragon Shout, Dragon Rend, which you know about, but you don't know. All you know is that it makes a dragon feel like weaker. You don't know what it does exactly. And so you go back to your friends, the Greybeards, and ask about it. And they're like, well, it was never made by the original dragons. So it's not something we study, the Dragon Rend Shout, because it was made by humans who were revolting against the dragons to weaken the dragons. And its use is outside the way of the voice because it was used as a weapon only. It wasn't used as a verbal tool of dragons. Because when dragons are actually fighting in this universe, they are having a verbal debate to the death. But because of the fact that this one was made by humans as a weapon, primarily, not actually like a piece of speech, it was not recorded by them. But they said that their ancient leader, who sits at seclusion at the very peak of the mountain, will have it. And will know more about the Shout, Dragon Rend. So they send you to the top of the mountain, and they're basically like, you're not going to get any more direct help from us. We gave you 2 shouts because they had to give you a special shout to get to the top of the mountain. And you meet this dragon. You don't expect a dragon. You expect like an old hermit, but you actually meet this dragon, Parthernex, who was not killed off and is quickly explained to be the dragon that betrayed Alduin in the ancient past after seeing men's plight under his kin, and taught them in conjunction with one of the divines, Kinnereth, the way of the voice, which is how to dragon shout and how to fight back. And he explains that Dragon Rend, he doesn't know it because a dragon can't comprehend it, but he knows that it's recorded in one of the Elder Scrolls, the one that was used to summon the dragon forward in time, but he doesn't know where it is, and likely you're better informed than he is at that point. So you do learn, though, that it forces a dragon to feel the sensation of mortality because dragons are considered immortal, because what I've been neglecting to tell you so far is that Alduin is not only coming back to life. Dragons don't breed in this universe. They just simply are. They have always been and always will be until they're killed by another dragon, who then steals their soul upon their death. You learn just before that the dragons are coming back to life, and Alduin is actually reanimating the ones that you were killed in the ancient past from their burial mounds with a special dragon shout. This is important because essentially you and dragons are the only things that can kill a dragon forever. And it's kind of explained that if their physical body dies, their soul just kind of like floats around in the ethers until their physical body is like reawoken by another dragon. So if a dragon is killed and you're not present, or another dragon isn't present, it's not killed. It's just physical body is destroyed for a time until they can be resurrected. So that's really the real reason why you're super important as a Dragonborn, because you can take these dragons' souls and finally like actually defeat them. You're the only human that can do it. And I think this is a good point to start talking about why the Firebrand DNA is kind of important, because the dragon, the way that the Elder Scrolls talks about the dragon's blood is basically, it's like the ultimate buff. You are essentially a lesser god, and if you have the dragon soul along with it, you are a god on the mortal plane.
Yeah, what's interesting about this? I'm going to recap also a little bit, Aurora, so that the game speak goes into
There's a lot of parallels,
yes,
interestingly.
yes, yeah. What was going on in that dragon wall?
Yeah, lots.
Yeah, there was a lot there where essentially it was essentially depicting the Orions ripping through space time and
Yeah.
from the other timeline, and then essentially going forward back in time, like what they did during the old Orion Wars, and that was being
Yeah.
depicted with that specific thing. But the fact that they mixed Draco and Dragon, from what I can see,
Yeah.
they mixed, the claiming of the soul thing, which then goes back to the whole Highlander thing of the quickening. They added that in there.
Yeah.
And what then takes place is this. How can I put it? The dragonborn DNA. The fact that it also can transmute this energy. I have noticed that also when this DNA clashes with that of Orion agenda here, it can cause this weird displacement here in the real world with the Firebrand DNA when the Orion clashes with the Firebrand. Also, the fact that you have Parthenax, which is the good dragon, you have Alduin, which is the bad one, considered to be linked with the darkness, and you have their predecessor also, which is Akatosh, which I consider them to be Enki, Enlil, and Anu. But also, Enlil is primarily in our own history linked to satanic, which is not completely always true, but he's linked to the darkness as in the Satan figure of the past, seeing humans as just noise and they have to be wiped out in the history. And I've always considered Alduin to be kind of that, and Parthenax to be kind of an Enki figure in the written history, even though it's not exactly the same. And you have the fact that the dragons are always there. They can morph back into a physical form. Your people, Roy, I know they can go from the magnetic energy to the physical. And also, somebody's trying to pull this out of my head as I'm going here. So sorry if I sound like I'm babbling. But they're with oh man, they pulled that one out of my head. Okay, with basically the oh my god, they did this to me again. Okay, sorry
I can
about this.
feel that. It's okay. Just relax. You'll get yourself back again.
Yeah, I gotta reground here for a second. They don't like it when we compare their histories. They get really mad when we do this.
Yeah.
What actually? Okay, here we go. One of your people, Royal, one called Rustak. I was hoping he would come through today, but he wasn't. What he explained, and I'm also going to put a little mini recording at the end of this show, where he explained he also liked not only the fact that it was linked to Nord history, like with the Maldekian type of history, or Asgardian, I should say, but he also really liked the fact that any of the beings that you start out as in the game, you can create whoever you want, also could be contain this DNA. It didn't matter who. It was because it was based on etheric DNA merged with physical form, and he actually liked that. He thought that was extremely accurate it was a subtle detail that was actually expanded on. And I've always enjoyed this game set because it's always been accurate as far as time goes, as far as also the Dragon Ring shout. What I pick up on that, this is the download. This is also what they weren't wanting me to say a minute ago, is that it's a rend, meaning to split and to divide within. meaning the Orions have their physical form and they have this greater intelligence, as I would call it, that you can kill the physical form, and there's this constant also recycling, greater intelligence that keeps coming back and reconstituting. But the good guys have the same capability. But if you do the divide and conquer on their agenda and split them and rend them, then they lose power. This is another part of that dragon rend concept. I mean, they do that to people all the time, but politically, physically, they always do the divide and conquer. But that can be thrown back on them just by merely speaking. I've created spells by which you can declare them as powerless, divided, and not able to enter your sovereign space. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so we left off with Parthenax, and Parthenax explains that there is a way for you to learn Dragonrend, and it would be easiest for just using the Elder Scroll in a time wound on his mountain where the ancient tongues depicted in the Alduin's Wall were these people. If you could use the Elder Scroll at the time wound, you could witness them and their use of the Elder Scroll to send him Alduin into the future. And it's almost, and Parthex basically goes, it's almost guaranteed they had to use Dragonrend just to weaken Alduin enough to use the Elder Scroll on him. Alduin, being the firstborn of Akatosh, he always claims that like it's some kind of real title, that he was the first dragon and that he is the world eater. And it's explained quite simply that it is his destiny, whenever the end of the world is to happen, that he will physically ingest the world and use mortal souls as energy to do it. Though it's never explained as to when this is going to happen. So you go on your mighty quest to find the Elder Scroll, and you ask around, and you finally get to the College of Winterhold, an arcane university up in the cliffs of northern Skyrim. Right here is the College of Winterhold, right where the finger of the pointer is. And you're sent out, and they tell you to find Septimus Cygnus, who is in quite strange fellow, to say the least. He is a Daedra worshipper and a very strong wizard. And Daedra are sort of like multi-dimensional beings. Some are good, some are bad, some are just meddlesome. The one he serves is Hermaeus Mora, which is the Daedric Prince of Knowledge and like hoarding knowledge. Pretty much if he doesn't know something, he will like tirelessly work to figure out to like learn it. And his realm of oblivion is called Apocrypha, which is like a giant library. And so you meet Septimus, if this little banner will go away, at that top cave right directly north of the college, so like right there on the map. And Septimus is like, it's close, but everything's close on the metaphysical scale because it's on our plane of existence. And that's all I can tell you. And he gives you some like weird dwarven like cubes and circles and tells you, go look in the dwarven ruins around this area and you'll probably find it, maybe. That's exactly kind of how he is. He's just, his mind's kind of messed up from all of the forbidden knowledge he kept stealing from the Daedric princes. So it's kind of hard for him to like get anything across straightforward. But he sends you to here, and you go underground into these subterranean dwarven ruins because the dwarves are extinct, as we know from our Morrowind video. And you traverse the ruins, and you end up in a place called Blackreach, the dwarven like subterranean cave community that is essentially Agartha in the Elder Scrolls. It's massive. It takes up like this whole part of the map. And you go to this one tower they have built. And the tower holds the Elder Scroll. You get the Elder Scroll and return to the top of Throat of the World, right up to here, back to where Parthenex lives. And you open the scroll and you read it. And when you read an Elder Scroll, you don't read an Elder Scroll. You get a series of visions downloaded to you that will teach you whatever the scroll has to do with. And there's like hundreds of Elder Scrolls, and they kind of pop in and out of existence in different places at different times. And they have to do with major world events, especially the one here. And because it's open in the time wound that it created when it sent Alduin forward in time, it actually created a rip in time that can be witnessed as like a pillar of spiraling light at the top of the world, the top of the Throat of the World. But like if somebody steps into it, they're not instantly transported back in time. It's just like a wound that was created in space-time, but like not a portal. And when you open the Elder Scroll there, it lets you peer through that time, like wormhole thing, to the events that happened on the other end. So when you open the Elder Scroll, you see the tongues use the Dragon Wren shout to force Alduin to land. And that's what the Dragon Wren shout does. It forces the dragons to land and experience mortality. They are unable to shout or attack when they're forced to land. And they are forced to kind of just sit there on the ground, like unable to move. It's like a super stunner. And as you come out of this vision, where you then see the tongues send Alduin forward in time using the Elder Scroll, Alduin himself appears at the top of the Throat of the World to face you, now realizing how big of a threat you actually are. The whole reason he freed you in the beginning of the game was he was trying to kill you before you became a threat, because he could tell you were Dragonborn from any distance away and knew exactly where you were, but he just couldn't get you. You got away. You slipped through his big black jaws, essentially. And he's been hunting you on and off the entirety of the game when he's not like reviving other dragons and working towards strengthening himself, because he's still extremely weak from the fact that he was sent forward through time and weakened by the blade, the tongues prior to his defeat. And you and Alduin have where is this picture? I think it's this one there. Have a awesome battle of huge proportions at the Throat of the World, where you do defeat Alduin after he's summoned meteor showers and shoots plumes of fire like geysers at you. You somehow battle through this and defeat Alduin, but Alduin's like, "You cannot kill me here or anywhere." And this black dragon is Alduin. Just forgot to mention that. But he's like, "Yeah, you can't kill me here or anywhere. No mortal can kill me on this plane of existence." And he flees. And it's unknown to where he flees until Parthenex, who used to be Alduin's lieutenant before he betrayed Alduin in the ancient times, goes, "Alduin has gone to Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife, to regain his energy by feasting on the souls of the dead people dying, like the dead Nordic heroes who are not like safe inside the halls there. Basically, the ones that are traversing the path that tests their soul before it's allowed to enter the afterlife fully, he's picking them off along the way. So pretty much all the people who die in the Civil War, he's just eating their souls before they can like fully get into their afterlife. They're in the dimension where like their afterlife is, but they have to prove themselves before they can get into the afterlife hall. And so you need to figure out how to get there. And basically it's like no mortal can get up to the place where Alduin goes to get into this afterlife dimension. You need a dragon because you can't fly. That's how it's explained. And so you know that the Jarl of Whiterun's keep, where he lives, was built originally to trap dragons. And so you go to him and ask, you want to help me? Well, he's the only of the local rulers called Jarls that is independent in the war. So he's like, yeah, no, not with a war going on. I can't lower my city's defenses and just willingly like let you have a dragon into your city, even though you've done so much for everybody in our world so thus far, and you're my thane, which is a thane is sort of like being knighted, but you're essentially a noble in his court. He's like, yeah, no, I can't do that for you right now. There's a war on. So you're like, what if I find a way to not fully end the war, which you could do to get past this in the game, but the way the story really has you doing it is, what if I find a way to put off the war for a time, guaranteeing you defense for your city and guaranteeing no one tries to take over your city while we're doing this. So you run to the Greybeards back at High Hrothgar and are like, can we hold a peace council here? They're like, sure. Because Parthenex has shown faith in you, we will do the same because we follow Parthenex's teachings. So then you go to the leaders of the Stormcloaks, Ulfric Stormcloak, and his side General Galmar. And then you go to General Tullius of the Imperial Legion and his lieutenant, what's her name? Legate Ricke. And so they both, after a bit of coercion, agree to meet you at High Hrothgar. And so the Jarl that you want to trap the dragon with is there. And I believe I actually have a picture of, here. So Elenwen, the leader of the Thalmor, is there. She knows who you are now, and that you're the one that broke into her embassy. This is the Jarl that you want to have trap the dragon with. General Tullius is behind this lady, and he's the military leader for the Imperials at that point during the war. This is Jarl Elosif. She is the Empire's claimant to the throne, so the claimant that the Empire recognizes. And then this is Legate Ricke. This is the Dragonborn. That's one of the Greybeards. That's Eastburn, one of the Blades like chronicler. Delphine, the Blades military leader. Ulfric Stormcloak, the leader of the rebellion, and Galmar, his lieutenant. They all sit, and the first order of business is Stormcloak and Galmar, who hate the Thalmor because they're trying to impose religious basically they were instrumental in the outlawing of the worship of Talos, the last Dragonborn, to sit down and if she's there. So you have to make the decision instantly. Can Elenwen stay or go? By this point in the game, most players hate the Thalmor with a passion, and so most people just kick her out. And she's like, "Oh, they will hear about this. This will cause problems for your empire," and storms off and waits outside. And then the council begins, and the council is like, "Yeah, we'll do the dragons are a problem. They're killing our troops. They're just moving. They're displacing supply lines. So, but what are you guys going to offer?" Ulfric's like, I'll give you one more chance to leave Skyrim. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to, the Empire's like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And so basically agreements are made, some cities swap hands, and you're allowed to capture the dragon in Dragon's Reach. So you do that. You call Odahviin, Alduin's new lieutenant, who could not resist the call of the Alduin's biggest enemy to his location. So the way a dragon can call another dragon to its location is to shout that dragon's name. And you call Odahviin which means winged snow hunter in the dragon's tongue. And he just couldn't resist the fact that you had the audacity to call him out. And you and the town guard, along with the Jarl's court wizard, and the Jarl's bodyguard, capture the dragon. And the dragon's pretty ticked. He's like, I can't believe I fell for this. I knew what this place was. I cannot believe I fell for this trap that you set for me. And then the wizard's like, I'm fascinated with dragons. Can I poke and prod you? And he's like, do not test my patience. This trap is... I'm only sitting here because I know that I'll be killed by the Dragonborn if I try to move. But I don't think anyone here will stop me from killing you if you try to poke and prod me. So then he flies you to the Sovngarde portal that Alduin uses. And you enter the portal and appear in... gosh. What the heck is going on with this computer? Jeez. Okay, come on. Sovngarde. So this is Sovngarde, and this is the major hall where all like the real heroes that are allowed admittance go to feast and party. It's like Valhalla for like Norse people and pagans. They drink and party and feast both for Shor, which is like the Nordic hero god, one of the Nordic hero gods. Also an avatar of Lorcan from our previous videos, his halls. And you go there, and some of the souls of characters you met throughout your adventures in Skyrim you meet on the way in there, who have evaded Alduin thus far, and pretty much only because they had a connection with you in life is the only reason that Alduin can't touch them. So the other souls, Alduin's eating everybody up who's trying to get in there. These guys just are... And Alduin has created a mass fog, so these souls can get lost on the way to testing themselves to get into there. And basically he's just picking off soul by soul. But the ones that have knew you when they were alive are able to get around. Alduin can't see them, essentially. So you... go there, and right here at the edge of this bridge with like the whalebone head, there stands the guard Sun, which is like the guard of the hall, and he tests the mettle of anyone that wants to enter. And he's basically like, "You're still alive. What are you doing here?" And you're like, "Oh, I've come to do my destiny and fight Alduin." And he's like, I still have to touch your metal because it's the decree, but by blood right, you're allowed in here. So basically, you hit him once with a sword, and he lets you through. And you and the ancient tongues meet up in there and come out to face Alduin in Sovngarde, and you defeat Alduin. And normally, when you kill a dragon, you absorb their soul, and like a swirling energies enter you. With Alduin, it's completely different. Alduin writhes around as you kill him, and he starts to scream, and he goes, "This is not the end," and then just explodes. You don't get a soul, he just explodes. And the reasoning that lore buffs everywhere have basically given for that is that Alduin still has a purpose as the world destroyer. He was kind of messed up because he became sick with power because he wanted to rule over men. So he's kind of like the Orions in the fact that he has a purpose, but he betrayed that purpose to rule. The Orions were supposed to go out of existence, and they fought that and crossed into other dimensions and timelines. And Alduin, his purpose was to destroy the world at that time when it was needed, but because he was so physically imposing and a lesser god, or an avatar of Akatosh in some capacity, he decided that he wasn't going to do what he was created to do, and he would rule over mortals, which was not what he was ever supposed to do. So in denying his like create what he was his like soul mission essentially, he overstepped the bounds. But since he still has that mission to do eventually, Akatosh didn't allow you to take the soul and just kind of like held it until the time when it's actually needed, and he'll come back to only do his job with like a ton of barriers on his abilities otherwise, from what the game's lore implies, like after you defeated him. And from this point on, the Dragonborn does whatever they want in Skyrim until the 2 major DLCs begin, which we will get into a little bit later. Just want to see if everybody else has anything they want to say.
Well, what is interesting about this though is when you are basically saying, well, I'll go to this part first. When Alduin invades Sovereign picking off the souls of those that died in the Civil War, that's essentially what soul traps are. That's what these Draco and Orions do, cause the for and against, and they take the energy from that. Well, within that whole test mentality, where their souls are being tested, that is also a false paradigm that is actually being deconstructed within that scene. It's one of those blink and you miss it sort of thing, but it's actually that whole paradigm is being deconstructed because they're showing darkness can invade that path, which is actually already a false paradigm. Well, say this Shore's palace here, or this castle. I recognize some of the architecture from some of the alien structures I've seen. I've seen reptilian and Orion structures look like this, and I've seen soul trap structures look pretty much almost like this before. And some are, of course, cubes and, of course, spheres. But with this, they make it it's like a gilded cage. Essentially, and testing your metal. The actual the hero's quest that everybody knows about, the Knight's Path, all that other stuff. That's complete BS. Except if you're actually using something to better your own soul and better your own path. There's like a symbolic gesture that's been kind of nodded to in that part. But also back to the time wound. Of course, there's time fractures that the Orion caused in space and on Earth. What happened here is there was somebody I read a while back, about I would say a month ago, and found out that she was on your homeworld there, Aurora, and her child self there was messing with magic, and she fell through one of these wounds, but it's something that had not taken place yet. This shows that all time is essentially one, and the Orions had not invaded yet at all, and messing with magic, and she ended up falling through a crack that connected her to Atlantis, and that version of her then got grabbed by the Orions that were already beginning to overtake Atlantis at the time, before its destruction. And I came to find out that sometimes time wounds can even exist prior to anybody messing around, because essentially, even though that's essentially the future that it's actually connecting to, it's still, since all time is one, it's still causing like a stain on time, even though the rupture had not taken place yet. And with the effect before the cause is how the Star Trek universe would see it, but. Them also being able to peer back to a particular moment using that. I've seen time fractures that actually then can look into the various dimensions that all the Orions have actually connected to. Like, say, if you have a fracture on a property, which is rare, but if you have one on a property, you can connect to another universe by which somebody else is actually connecting to this. Wherever the Orions actually went to, these things can actually quantumly entangle too. That's being healed as we speak, but this process that I've seen the paranormal investigation community run into this before, where they'll get they don't know they're getting this, but they'll get, say, EVPs, which are electronic voice prints from what they think are ghosts, but they're actually other people that are on the other ends of these fracture points that are actually connecting them, thinking they are probably spirits of some sort, it could be multiple versions of humans in other universes. It could be alien. It could be another time frame from thousands and thousands of years ago. I read a report by which some paranormal investigators went to a haunted, they thought it was a haunted fortress, and they saw ghosts. What they thought were ghosts of soldiers, but it was really that time frame they were partially stepping into because of the fracture. And those people saw them as more like a haunting as well. That's where the place had gotten its that legendary status from, because the people before saw the investigators that showed up and even drew pictures of them, and it was the very people that showed up to investigate the haunting by which it was named for them. And that's how some of these fractures tend to operate.
Yeah, so do you want to get into the DLC then?
I know I wanted to mention a little bit with the Civil War first before we do that.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about the Civil War. So,
Yeah.
the Civil War is a rebellious movement that was started by Ulfric Stormcloak after the events of the White Gold Concordat. So 30 years prior to the events of Skyrim, a war took place in Tamriel between the Empire, which at that point in history had High Rock, Hammerfell, Skyrim, Cyrodiil, Hearts of Morrowind, and Elsewhere under its control. What happened was Elsewhere broke off and joined a group called the Aldmeri Dominion, which encompassed Somerset Isle, so the High Elves, Valenwood, the Wood Elves, and Elsewhere, the Khajiit race. So the Cat People, the Wood Elves, and the High Elves. The Legion, having to man its forts, stop bandits, and fight the war, was spread thin, and the Aldmeri Dominion forces, led by the Thalmor, who run the Aldmeri Dominion, basically took over the Imperial City. The Empire drew like everybody it had from these three provinces, and were able to retake it, but the Emperor was like, let's sign a peace treaty because I don't want to deal with this war anymore. Well, because he was the one that sued for peace, the Aldmeri Dominion stepped all over him and were like, well, we want certain concessions. First off, they saw the worship of Talos as a affront to their existence due to the fact that the Thalmor, the ruling body of the Aldmeri Dominion, see existence as a hindrance to them because they are high elves and they know that all mortal races are descendants of the primordial spirits that helped create the universe and the planet, and that their powers were taken as a result of Lorcan tricking them into creating the world, and they'd be immortal god-like beings if it wasn't for Lorcan. And they saw Talos as, or any worship of anything distinctly human, as the embodiment of Lorcan. So they demanded that the worship of Talos be abolished. They also demanded certain territorial concessions in Hammerfell, so this area here. But for this point of the Civil War, it's really the worship of Talos that is important. So around the same time, because all of the Legion was taken out of these provinces, the local hillmen, or Forsworn, here on the Markarth side, over here, they are a group of Bretons that see the land as theirs, took over Markarth, the city down here with the Ram's Head as its capital, like sigil. Well, Ulfric Stormcloak, who was recently released from Thalmor prison and likely brainwashed into some sort of sleeper agent, as the lore implies, was young and had just became the Jarl of Windhelm, over here where the bear is. the Jarl Igmund of Markarth pleads with the other Jarls to send him aid to take back his city. Ulfric comes with his forces, and Ulfric, in his youth, was training to become a Greybeard, so he can dragon shout. And he's not great at it, but he has a few very powerful shouts. So he leads his Stormcloak soldiers, which was really just his city guard with better gear, and retook Markarth in what is known as the Markarth Incident, because inside the city there were still a lot of Nords that just didn't care about the Forsworn taking over the city, as long as the new Breton gentry didn't oppress them, which they didn't. By all accounts, the Forsworn were actually good leaders to most people. Well, Ulfric saw it as a racial betrayal for these people to choose to willingly live under these Bretons, and so he wiped out every person in the city, man, woman, and child. And then gave the city back to Jarl Igmund with the stipulation that Talos worship would be free in this city and the White Gold Concordant be damned. Well, the Empire, reeling after a long and tiresome war with Thalmor, and the Thalmor having set up basically Gestapo to capture Talos worshippers and torture them to death to try to find more Talos worshippers, showed up and we can't allow this to happen. And Jarl Igmund was fine with going, well, okay, law's law, I'm going to outlaw Talos worship again. That pissed Ulfric off royally, and he kind of stewed, throwing out un-Thalmor-esque propaganda for the next 20 years as he ruled his city. Always allowing Talos worship, but saying that he didn't. Sort of if I don't see it, I don't care. He can't. More so though, because he was actually worshiping. So by the events of Skyrim, the province of Skyrim by the events of the game is a powder keg, waiting to blow up. And pretty much you can draw a line right down the middle of East and West to see which side supports who. All of the eastern holds of Skyrim all the western holds of Skyrim support the Empire. And are it sucks we can't worship Talos anymore. He's our god. He was one of our people. But the Empire needs us to be strong. The people in the East are he was one of us. We can't turn our back on our god, the founder of the very empire that just said you can't worship him. So it's basically Ulfric, seeing how split the nation is, goes to Solitude, the imperial capital, city with the wolf head right here, where the imperial recognized High King of Skyrim, King Torrig, was living. Torrig was just becoming king. His father had just died. He had just been coronated king, and Ulfric storms in and goes, I challenge you in the ancient right of our land to battle for the rulership of the land. Now, by all accounts, Ulfric had all the rights to do this. That's not the part that's by ancient Nordic law, this is all, Ulfric had all the right to do that. What the Empire and its supporters do not like was that Ulfric abused his Thu'um, and instead of fighting Torrig one-on-one, which he easily still could have killed Torrig, he used his Thu'um and shouted Torrig apart. And the supporters of the Empire see that as Ulfric having no honor, and not actually caring about the duel. Ulfric's supporters see it as Ulfric had the right to use any weapon available to him to win the duel. So the Empire is Ulfric Stormcloak, you are a traitor to the Empire because of how you conducted yourself in this duel, and put a price on his head. The Jarls that support Ulfric's worship of Talos and Ulfric as the High King break away in the Stormcloak Rebellion. So Dawnstar, Winterhold, Windhelm, and Riften. They break away. And Morthal, Markarth, Solitude, and Falkreath, they still stay with the Empire. Whiterun, which is the center, the heart of the province, stays independent. Jarl Bulgriff does not want any part of this war. He's got his own problems to deal with because he's got giants running amok. He's got bandits running around. Now he has dragons flying around, killing people. He doesn't want any part of the war until the war's knocking on his door. You can join either side. Both make you go through a little initiation test to see if you're good enough to join them. Personally, the Empire is the choice I always choose now, because Ulfric is a sleeper for the Thalmor anyway, because he was captured during the last war and tortured. And when you break into the Thalmor embassy to try to find out about the dragons, you find a book about Ulfric, and that he is basically a sleeper agent for the Thalmor, that the Thalmor want him to create this rebellion, want him to win this rebellious war, and then hand over the province to the Thalmor, which would never work, even if they did win, because Ulfric, in his dialogue when he wins the war, he goes, "The moot will meet," and the moot is the meeting of all the Jarls that would choose the new king. And it's highly implied that your services, even though you're not a Jarl yourself, more than dictate the fact that you have the right to rule, as Dragonborns have always had the right to rule. So it's highly implied that if your character does not become king at some point, he will either become king of Skyrim or emperor of a reformed empire later on in history. It's implied that in the lore. It's never actually happened because it's in the future from the end of the game. But Ulfric's people, the side is it's a religious conflict at heart for freedom of worship. But the problem is that it's backed up by the Stormcloaks are openly racist. Skyrim is for the Nords. No one else is allowed in Skyrim. We're going to go back to being a traditional people. And their views are extremely unrealistic in the world that they're in. And they fight the war and it's they could win. But the Stormcloaks always seem to be, even though they have great charismatic people leading them, that great personalities leading them, how they conduct themselves outside of that is very irksome. They go out of their way to do as much damage as possible. They would not have any problem culling off anyone that's not a Nord inside their lands, and any Nord that ever supported the Empire. The Empire, on the other hand, is inclusive, and they're the real reason that they're keeping down this religious worship that they want to is because they know that they couldn't survive another war with the Dominion. And the only thing that I personally believe that the Empire failed at in my interpretation of the lore is that they seem to have forgotten that humans reproduce considerably faster than elves do in this universe. And in the time that two human generations could have came to adulthood and be fit to fight, half a generation of elves could have become fit to fight. And the Empire, even the General Tullius, the leader of the Empire, is basically saying, we're in an interwar period. There will be another war between the Aldmeri Dominion and the Empire. And this one, there will be no concordant. It will be all holds barred. There will be no holds barred to the last breath. because the Thalmor are becoming increasingly desperate to uncreate themselves. And that the Civil War can go either way based on the player's choice. But the background behind it is religious and racial in nature. And
Yeah, that I find this interesting, though. What I've always picked up about the whole Civil War, of course, it's symbolizing the for and against in our society. Also, in many different countries, here in the United States, it's political, Democrat, Republican kind of thing. But also the fact that the Thalmor steal Ulfric Stormcloak, and he's basically, think about the name Stormcloak, false flag, cloaking the actual storm. You're the one creating the whole storm by which this is actually taking place. Thalmor being the Orions and their essentially agenda to divide and conquer. And I've always said that then Ulfric Stormcloak is essentially the controlled opposition. And essentially it's how the Q movement is now. Where it's a controlled opposition by which there is another hero elected, let's just say, in this political arena that is happening right now. And it's actually interesting. This came out in 2011. This game did, and the fact that this is being said now, this part of it, and it's essentially what they're trying to co-create is a civil war or unrest here in the United States, both politically and historically. They're trying to say, oh, this one's righteous, by saying, oh, they're helping people, they're purging, but they're basically wanting to, this in the game, they're wanting to purge all diversity. Kind of like how certain political leaders here, like say Trump and them, don't like different diversities. It's kind of like how that's being reflected in the game sequence. And you have the Empire, which everybody demonizes, and you have, or they demonize, I should say. And you have the Thalmor expecting the White Gold Concordant. The White Gold Concordant is the embodiment of what I call the yield, or the cap of information, or the cap of being able to do certain things, see certain things, know certain things. And very much like what you and I were talking about with Zeus and Prometheus, where he wanted to give humanity the knowledge, fire of knowledge. Zeus went, nope, and then unleashed Pandora's box, basically. And essentially, this is essentially that same thing being reflected. People always think that when I always I'm saying, oh, the Q movement is this regurgitation of the Cabal in that form, and coming back being the hero of the people. They always get mad and say, oh, I must hate the fact that children are being saved. They automatically go there. And it's like no, I didn't say good wouldn't be done here. But eventually that whole thing's going to fizzle out, and it's going, the whole, what Viking and I call the Cabal contract is going to run its course, and it's going to be gone. And when the Orions are no longer, fueling this, eventually, of course, you'll still have the human servants to deal with. You'll still have a lot of the idiots to deal with. But that type of contractual influence that was bound to the Orions will eventually disappear, which is characterized in Ulfric Stormcloak being brainwashed, sleeper agent put back in society, basically programmed and put back. So that I like that comparison, but that was done in 2011. Okay, we can actually go on to the DLCs now. These are actually different storylines that go along with the whole Skyrim lore, which are very interesting. One is Dawnguard, that's vampire hunters, and then there is the Dragonborn, which is an evil Dragonborn that you have to go after in it, which is, I find, interesting. So, Ryan, go right ahead.
All right, so Dawnguard. So after your adventures dealing with Alduin, or depending on if you buy the game with Dawnguard already installed, you'll find that cities are being attacked in the evening by bands of vampires, and very rarely you'll run into a character in some very unique armor, and he says he's with the Dawnguard and to head to Fort Dawnguard in the Rift, which is the south, which is down here. And basically, you go there and you go to this location right here, Fort Dawnguard. And Fort Dawnguard is an ancient castle fortress that was home to the Dawnguard, an ancient order of vampire hunters. And an old visual of Stendar named Isran is rebuilding the old Dawnguard, is like reinstating the Dawnguard as to deal with the new vampire threat out of Castle Volokar. So he sends you to an ancient tomb that is the site where the Vigilant of Stendar's attackers, which were a group of vampires, came from, and you fight your way through it, and you meet a lady named Serana, and she is the daughter of Cold Harbor, which is a pure-blooded vampire, as pure-blooded vampire as you can be, because she was not bitten to become a vampire. Serana and her mother and her father all became vampires through the actions of the Daedric prince Molagbal, who is the father of all vampires and created the vampirism, the first vampires in the Elder Scrolls, and most vampires descended from them. But he can also bestow the gift himself. And the way he does, he creates new lines of like the purest type vampires he can, which are called vampire lords, which have like a special transformed form. He does it in a way that is for women. He forcibly has sexual relations with them. And with the men, he just kind of grants it to them because he is also the Daedric Prince of Rape. And do with that information what you will in what I said he does to the women to turn them into vampires. And so you meet her. She doesn't... You know she's a vampire because she has the distinct physical signs, which is like yellow glowing eyes and some physical like paleness and stuff. But she leads you to Castle Volokar, where her father, Lord Harkin, is. Which Castle Volokar is this castle out here in the distance. And Harkin is like, you brought me back my daughter and the Elder Scroll she had with her. You did me a great service. And you want to become a vampire? I'll turn you into the best vampire you can be. And if you are a vampire already, he goes, oh no, my blood is better. And will like overwrite your old vampireness with his vampireness. And if you're a werewolf, he goes, oh, I could smell the stench of your wolf's blood at the point in which you entered my home. I can take care of that when I turn you. So that's mostly a gameplay thing, so you can become with him, because if you say no, he kicks you out of his house, but he won't kill you. He'll be like, because of the service you did me, I will not allow my underlings, like he has other vampires that live under him, to hurt you, but you will never be allowed back here. And if you come back here, we will see you as food. And that's what he does. So I've never actually played through the vampire side of it, but the story is essentially the same. Harkin is trying to create a world where vampires can run amok. In a very similar fashion as the way the Orions want a world where it is all irradiated and able to for them to run around openly. He wants to cover the world in permanent darkness so vampires are never weakened by the sun. So his plan to do this is in using an artifact called the Bow of Ariel, which he doesn't know the whereabouts of, but he knows that he can do it with this artifact. Where is it? This is the Bow of Ariel. And using special arrows soaked in his daughter's blood, shot at the sun will blot out the sun. So he knows this and is willing to do it, and if this happens, it'll make vampires extremely strong. So obviously the Dawn Guard are against it. And even other vampires are like, this is the worst idea any of us have had for a long time, because there are a lot of vampires that are like easily hiding out in society that do not want to, like, because if this happens, basically, like, people will try to fight back, and they just don't want to deal with it. They much rather be feeding on people, like, unknowing that they're even there.
Hmm.
So Harkin's plan is to get this bow, and to do so, he needs the Elder Scroll that you had as a Dragonborn. He needs the Elder Scroll that his daughter had, and he needs the Elder Scroll his wife has, and his wife fled to a pocket dimension of oblivion, not controlled by the Daedric princes, basically to keep it away from him, because she even sees what he's doing as awful and like not able to be, like, comprehended. So regardless of which side you choose, Serana is who goes with you regardless. Basically is like, yeah, we need to find my mom and get her scroll so we can keep it safe, because my father will find a way into that dimension sooner or later. So you and Serana go into a place called the Soul Cairn. And this is this pocket dimension. It's part of Oblivion, but it's not controlled by one of the Daedric princes. This little, like, there's like an overlay. It's causing a problem. This is the Soul Cairn. And the Soul Cairn is a place where the souls of anyone whose soul goes into a black soul gem goes. So soul gems are crystals of unknown origin that are magically imbued and can trap souls, and then the souls can be used to produce magical energy, essentially.
Hmm.
These soul gems, there's light soul gems and lesser soul gems. All lighter soul gems are pretty much for animal souls only. They can be used in enchanting. Stronger the animal, the stronger, like, the physical being, the stronger the soul in the animal sense. Black soul gems are when you start trapping mortal beings in the soul gems, and like humans, and other sentient races. And once the soul is used in the soul gem, you end up in the Soul Cairn. And you actually meet some characters from previous Elder Scrolls games in there. You meet Jib, who was one of the first characters you meet in Morrowind. And I think you meet a guy from Oblivion as well. But you go through and you learn that Valerica, Serana's mother, has her Elder Scroll, but is being guarded by the dragon, who is kind of the enforcer of the rulers of this dimension's, like, gods, basically. He's their enforcer and is guarding her. And this dragon is called Durnhavir. And Durnhavir is, you fight Durnhavir and you beat Durnhavir, and he allows you to go see Valerica because you basically are like, I'm not going to hurt her. And he is trapped in this dimension by these beings that call themselves the Ideal Masters. And what they are, is, from what I've gathered, is they are a group of ancient wizards that decided to leave the mortal plane and move into Oblivion, and they carved out their own pocket of Oblivion. And instead of staying in a body, they actually transform themselves into giant crystals. And they project their consciousness through the crystal that they are, essentially. And I think that has to do with, like, crystalline DNA. It's like this slight disclosure of that.
Yeah, I believe that is a slight disclosure of that, even though they tried to depict that as dark and evil, like, oh, you shouldn't go there. They linked it in with vampires, and they linked it in with soul traps, which is essentially what the Soul Cairn is essentially a big soul trap, basically, where a soul could go into like a pocket of oblivion, or some people depict it in religion, like oh, you're being sent to hell when you die. You're going to be in pain and torment and all that. People see it this way. Now, I find it very interesting with with the vampires. With Harkin, for instance. I was looking at this name when I was playing through Dawn Guard, and it's a mix between Archon and Harker, meaning Harker like Jonathan Harker from Bram Stoker's Dracula, and the character of Harker who helps Van Helsing hunt Dracula down, and they set him on fire and chop his head off. But at the end of the book, but it's essentially he's a mix of those two names, Archon agenda, basically blotting out the sun or turning the world into a radiated planet, and also the vampire virus, which the Orions created in order to create what we know of as actual vampires on the planet. And some of them, can they be out in the sun a little bit? Yes, there's some that cannot. They're more ghoulish looking, like the Nosferatu looking types with the long fingers, like a ghoul looking, or a figure, or like in Celtic myth and lore, it's the Fomorian or from Orion look, where that the elves were opposing. They were all deteriorator looking. That's where you get some of the Syrian groups and some of the Orion groups, and it's that Nosferatu look. But with them, they basically say Serana tells you that it's Molag Bal that helps that actually creates the vampires, and actually through the whole sexual depravity and then sexual circle type of thing. And that is actually true to an extent, because in the Cabal you have the reptilians and vampiric entities. Also, human Cabal do this as well. They gain the ability as well to draw sexual energy out, and it's through sexual humiliation, depravity, and all that, the vampirizing of the energies. And the Orions and the Draco brought this about. And I've actually seen what Molag Bal looks like. He kind of has that hooded, tall, white kind of appearance, or Orion appearance to him, or at least one of his versions I saw, his avatar.
Yeah, one of his forms, because Stage of Princes can take whatever form they want. So yeah, well, sometimes he does appear that way.
Yeah, he does. Sometimes he appears that way. So it's associated with like chains and all that. We'll get into that in Elder Scrolls Online when we talk more about that. But I find that very interesting. Not interesting in like, I'm happy that's happened. I'm saying interesting is that it syncs up to actual Cabal agendas, Orion agendas, that also the sexual slavery stuff that goes on in the background. And also there's blood sacrifices that take place on behalf of Draco and Orions, and ceremoniously with the satanic cults. And that actually is where some of that disclosure comes in. So, Ryan, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to get that out.
No, you're good. The Ideal Masters had kept Durnavir there because he tried to get them to make him an army of undead, and they tricked him into serving them in the agreement. So Durnavir's trapped there, but he realizes that you as a Dragonborn can summon him out using his name. And so every time you do this, once you're back out in the normal world, you say his name, he comes out, and he actually comes out more regenerated than he did, because originally he looks all degenerated. He's got like rot, like he looks like he's rotting and like just degenerating, and every time he comes back out, he's like getting healthier. But he is still drawn back to the Soul Cairn by the Ideal Masters, but you're healing him by allowing him to come in and out of the Soul Cairn. So after the Soul Cairn, you meet with a Moth Priest, one of the specialists who specializes in reading the Elder Scrolls. You go through a series of events to find him. They're trivial. They're kind of just find the Moth Priest. He's somewhere in Skyrim. And he reads the Elder Scrolls and says basically to do that Harkin's plan would work if he can get the bow, and the bow is at a place called the Forgotten Vale at Ariel's Chantry, which is like a countryside monastery devoted to Ariel, which is the elven interpretation of Akatosh. So you travel there and you find, I believe, you travel there. Just let me make sure. Do I have a picture of it? I think I have a picture of it. Oh my gosh, this share screen stuff is messing up.
I know the computers are being really messed with.
I must have lapsed, but basically it's just like a fortress on a hill.
Okay.
And you go there and you find the bow, and you meet with one of the last surviving uncorrupted snow elves. And when we get into the new races for this game, I'll tell you about the snow elves.
Okay.
And you get the bow, and instead of using Serana's blood to make arrows, you imbue the arrows with sun energy to thwart the vampiric agenda, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And they do more damage to vampires. And then with the bow, you assault Castle Volokar with the Dawn Guard and Serana, because she sees what her father is doing is evil and realizes that he needs to die. So you kill Lord Harkin after a long battle with him in his special vampire lord form. I will show you guys vampire lords when we get into the new races as well. Mm-hmm. And you win, and the vampire threat ceases. There's no more cities just being openly attacked, but you can still do jobs for the Dawn Guard, like hunting like reclusive vampires. And that's really it for Dawn Guard. I think you get a cool horse, and it's like a flaming skeletal horse named Arvak. And that's really it. And there's not much else going on there, but I feel Dawn Guard is really just there to show that, to like soft drop like the crystalline DNA thing, the soul trapping, and vampires, as well as the whole Orion agenda to change what the environment is.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe that was the soft dropping of the disclosure of that, exactly what you were saying. I believe you interpreted that correctly. And they had, of course, little name changes in there. They had to give a nod to Bram Stoker and any of the different types of vampiric incarnations they've made over the years. Now, people may be curious to know that even though last Halloween, Aurora and us did an episode on vampires themselves, and there's people that can draw the energy out of people, like a succubus or incubus type of energy. Of course, there's the demonic and reptilian forms that are that way. But there are actual vampires, like, as you know, with the fangs. They depicted them pretty much correctly in Interview with a Vampire, and True Blood has also depicted them correctly. Also, to an extent, there are some also that can do the shape-shifting thing, like werewolves. They can actually move back and forth. That's why the history tends to mix them, because there are some older ones that are shapeshifters, very much like Harkin is a different type. He's the Lord type. And those are the ones that are closer to, say, an Orion Lord basically in DNA, and some of them went the other route where they became this Nosferatu-looking, ogre-looking thing after a while. But we can actually continue, but I do have to actually move my computer over to the plug. So sorry to everybody watching this. My face is going to be dark from this point on, but I got to move it. So yeah, all the plugs are on this side of the room. So there we go.
Okay, so Dragonborn DLC time, because this one is relatively easy to get through. So, shortly after you finish killing Harkin, you go back around, adventure more, find some cool stuff, build your house if you haven't built your house yet, and then you go into one of the major cities, and some cultists are there, and they're like, "Are you Dragonborn?" Or no, they're actually like, "Are you the one saying you're Dragonborn?" And you're like, "Yeah, I am." Or you can be like, "Nah, I'm just not that guy." And they're like, and either way, they're like, "You're a liar," and they attack you. And then they go, "You're a liar. Also bear witness when Lord Mirak reappears." And you're just like, "What?" So they drop a note, and it's an execution order written by somebody named Mirak, and they are killing you on his orders. So you go to the island of Solstheim, which on the Tamriel map is this island right here. That one. And you go there, which the map of it is this one. And you land, you arrive in Raven Rock, which is this city down here. It's small. It's a trading settlement set up by House Redoran of the Great Houses of Morrowind, because Solstheim is a racially shared land between the people of the Dark Elves of Morrowind and the Nords of Skyrim. So pretty much south side of the island is all Dunmerry, north side of the island is Nordic, essentially. So they're just like, yeah, I think there's some, that cult is at Tiempo. Well, this is an Italian map, I just realized, but at the Temple of Mirak.
It's not in English.
Yeah, at the Temple of Mirak. But right here. So you go there and you go through the temple and you find a book, one of these black books of Hermaeus Mora, which is a Daedric artifact and a Daedric portal. So when you read these books, you get transported to Apocrypha, the Daedric realm of Hermaeus Mora. It's like a giant library. This is what it kind of looks like. Pages everywhere, books are the walls, and weird tendril lights and stuff, because Hermaeus Mora himself is a nasty-looking creature of that look. That's how he chooses to portray himself. He could show up as anything, though, because he is, again, a Daedric prince, and they can appear however they wish. And as I said before, he is Daedric prince of knowledge and stuff. So you also, at this point, meet Mirak. This is Mirak, the first dragonborn, as he claims. And he goes, "I could have dealt with Alduin myself. My ambition was greater." And he basically, what he was trying to do is make himself immortal. And so he was working with Hermaeus Mora and using Hermaeus Mora's vast library to do so. And finally, he made a deal to be Hermaeus Mora's enforcer, not realizing Hermaeus Mora would not let him keep living on like the mortal plane, and forced him to live in Apocrypha. So the entirety of the DLC is Mirak is growing in power and like gaining supporters outside by like using magic to invade people's like minds and bend their will to him. And through the other people's worship of him, he's hoping to gain enough power to basically sever his bond with Hermaeus Mora and leave that dimension so that he can come to back to Tamriel and rule. The entirety of the DLC, you're just gaining new shouts so that you can beat him. And so you go to the next major location. You come out of your trance where you're in Apocrypha, and you go to the village of the Skal, which is a Nordic group that lives on the island. And they teach you their history of Mirak and Hermaeus Mora, and how Hermaeus Mora has often meddled in their lives because they have some of the last knowledge in the world that Hermaeus Mora doesn't have. And they tell you about the Nordic ruins on the island and how you're going to pretty much need the Bend, Will, and Dragon aspect shout to beat Mirak. Otherwise you're pretty much gonna have to make a deal with Hermaeus Mora anyway, so that you can go through his dimension unimpeded. So they're like, the easiest way to find and make a deal with Hermaeus Mora is to go down here to Tel Mithrin. It's this mushroom symbol. And what it is it's the Wizard's Tower of the Telvanni, one of the last of the Telvanni mages, Neloth. And the reason why on the map it's a big mushroom is because the Telvanni wizards live in giant mushrooms. And he and you go to, where is it? This place here. I can't tell the Nichardak, a dwarven ruin, and you get a black book so that you can have an audience with Hermaeus Mora, again, this thing. And he basically is like, I will give you my favor if you get me the information that the Skull have that I don't have. So you go back to the Skull village, back here, and are like, can he have that info? And they're not with it, but like they realized that Mirak coming back would be a way bigger threat than the village, like the little bit of knowledge they have. So they give him their knowledge in return for Hermaeus Mora like helping you. Mm-hmm. And then you go collect Dragon Aspect is a shout that gives the Dragonborns extra power for and like a cool golden aura around them of like armor, like ethereal armor almost, whenever they use it, and it doesn't last for long, but it like is an extreme boost to an already extremely powerful being. And he tells you where to get that, and he also tells you where to get the words for the Bend Will shout. And the Bend Will shout does exactly what it says. It bends things to your will. With the first word, you can bend animals to your will. With the second word, you can bend people to your will. And with the third and final word, you can bend dragons to your will. So you use that. You use another black book to go back into Apocrypha to fight Mirak. And you use the Bend Will shout to bend the will of Mirak's dragon that he's been using, like been one of Mirak's dragon allies, to get you to Mirak. You and Mirak then have an epic battle of shouting and like dragon shouts, swords, magic, until you've weakened Mirak considerably, and he drops his guard long enough for Hermaeus Mora to come up and impale him with one of his black tentacle things, like these. And he's like, how dare you think you could trick me in my own dimension, sort of thing. And Mirak dies, you get his cool-ish armor, and that's the end of that DLC. Pretty much what this DLC was kind of a nod to the fans in some way, because Solstheim was a place you visited in Morrowind. And there's a lot of stuff that had to do with Morrowind, like there, that you'd experience if you played through it and you already played Morrowind. But also, you got to see how the choice of which side you're on in this world is really what affects things, because how strong you are is like the same, but if you're doing good, you often just get more abilities. Now, you end the DLC with Hermaeus Mora thinking you're his new champion, but he can't control you like he did Mirak because the type of deal you made with him. Mm-hmm. So you're free to go, and it's implied that after these events, your character does become the newest emperor of the Empire, at least the King of Skyrim, but it's never actually, like, it hasn't been said yet because Elder Scrolls 5 hasn't come out yet.
Or Elder Scrolls 6 hasn't come out yet.
Oh, yeah, Elder Scrolls 6 hasn't come out yet.
Yeah. What I find fascinating, though, there's a really big point here that in the beginning, that people are being telepathically controlled by Mirak and to uncover his temple. And I always found this fascinating historically because there are a couple of sites on the planet that actually drew people to them to either blow them up, a few sites, either blow them up or to uncover them in some fashion. One of which was the temple of Baal, I believe, is in Turkey. That completely got destroyed, blown up by Muslim insurgents, and to erase. Basically, Baal wanted his presence erased so he could reinvent himself, the real one. He's basically an Orion Lord. A couple of them. One of them was the Bosnian pyramids. Now, I see those as primarily benevolent, but there was a couple of things that tipped me off there. There might have been something negative there, like an energy collector of some kind that maybe I believe the Orions had augmented that. It's not in control anymore there. Because they also need to see, the energy collection units need to see sky in order to operate. Ironically, they need the sun, and the Orions are allergic to the sun like vampires. They need it to power their stuff, but yet at the same time, they're allergic to it. But with this, the people, reminded me of the people that were digging out Murak's temple in Dragonborn, because of the fact that they are basically giving homage to Murak, and they don't really know why they're digging, they're just digging. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a group of people I saw in a documentary, or on a film on YouTube rather, excuse me, where there was one guy in particular, I'm thinking, okay, this is exactly the same. He goes, I have no idea why I'm here or why I'm digging. Those were his words paraphrased, and then I came to find out the spot he was standing on underneath that they were excavating was an Orion augmentation to a pyramid that was uncorruptible, but they were trying to infect it with their nanotech and their energy collection units, and it didn't quite work, and the Orions now had to shut that down because even exposing it to the sunlight didn't do anything for them, and they weren't able to get as much energy because the pyramid next to it was healing. And it was counteracting. It was made long before the invasions, and it was counteracting what they were doing. Well, the third point was, and I didn't understand this until I understood energy collection technology more. The site of the ancient city of Troy from Homer. Well, what happened was, remote viewing wise, I saw an energy collection unit way underneath there. Troy came much later, and there was a lot of things it was built on. Well, the archaeologists that discovered Troy thought it was a great idea to dynamite all the way through it.
Oh, yes, Heinrich Schliemann. Yep.
Heinrich Schliemann, yes. And he thought it was a brilliant move to dynamite this. And then he discovered he dynamited through Troy all the way to a much older civilization that had been underneath it. And what I came to find out was he was actually being controlled by something that was much, much further underground, that they needed the vent opening for an energy collection unit that was actually on the verge of dying out. And they wanted that vein reopened up. I came to find out that's why he acted the way he did. It was because he was being controlled to blow that up and go straight through and open that fissure up. And with an explosive force that they could have also sucked the energy in from. And I came to find that out. Now with Hermaeus Mora, that appearance that you were showing, I see those eyeball things all the time. And I used to just think that these were Orion technology, which I believe they started out as, and I still believe that they are at least working with. I came to find out that they are actually more slaved and servanted to Orion interests. And Orions also like to create these constructs that use flesh and technology together. They even have spaceships that have beating hearts and weird looking corrupted trees in the center of them and stuff like that. Something you'd expect to see in the Elder Scrolls. And the architecture is like these weird arc-like things with orbs sitting in the center, and some of them are rotting like harvester spheres of goo in the center of beings that have deteriorated. But these eyes in particular, they're mechanical and organic. They look exactly like how you see of Hermaeus Mora with the tentacles. They have octopus-type DNA used in them and weird like optic nerve things that come off them. but they also have a consciousness of their own to where they are more like bounty seekers or sigil like seekers. People that have a certain sigil or a certain energy wavelength. They called themselves the unseen in the background, and I don't care how pissed they get because I'm mentioning it, but they are like an AI consciousness wrapped into an organic flesh-like type of suit, and there are these weird eyes. They depicted them very loosely also in the Legend of Zelda series too, but more so as Hermaeus Mora is one of the Daedric princes. And the fact that he's the Daedric prince of knowledge and has that library, they act unseen in the background and gather information for the Orions, and they can be a royal pain in the ass too if you run into them. They squish like a grape if you encounter them. They're basically an eyeball, and they'll squish like a grape. But it's like I could feel that kind of building before I was actually talking about it. They're beings that are very happy at the moment I've mentioned this, but I consider them more of a henchman. But they were a created like henchman or construct to Orion interest, and so it's very interesting that Apocrypha is this solid like library of information. Oh man, they really don't want me talking about that. Okay, there's also a good Akashic, of course, the Akashic library, the benevolent Akashic library. You always hear me talking about that, but there's also a negative thread into what you would consider to be a realm of oblivion, where they like to keep knowledge. You always hear me talk about the photonic realms or those type of things, and that's essentially the realms of oblivion. Well, you have some where information is being stored, and those are called code repositories. And it is very similar. You don't see the pages out like that. If our mind were to perceive it, it would look like it had paper and contracts. And this is where a lot of those like negative soul contracts and all that crap exist. And if we also, our minds were able to see it, it would look like a big series of, oh man, they don't want me to talk about this. Okay. Something was grabbing my vocal cords as I was trying to describe this. Big round room with like an orb in the center, and it would have a series of like, almost like drawer looking things. Sometimes there's a guard in there, sometimes there's demons in there. And you end up theoretically having to close that down. Well, with each code repository, they can just replicate a new one. And it's very similar in look, if we were to perceive it, very much like Hermaeus Mora's realm of Apocrypha. And you would see these eyeball things moving around and stuff like that in there as well. So I find that very fascinating that is actually very similar to, if not the same, as this portion of the game. And as for Mirak, he could also be seen as the embodiment of like of course he's the villain in that, but you could actually see him, of course he strikes a deal thinking, oh, you can strike a deal but make out of it, like how some of the Cabal families are, where they strike a deal and they think they can, with some of these beings, and they think they're above that and they can escape from that, but it always eats them. That history and that contract always eats them alive. Very much like how the Code Cabal is now with the way they've been carrying on, and through this year with all that's been going on, this whole contract of theirs will just swallow them, and we'll be left with more of a Renaissance period, or some people call it the Golden Age afterwards. But it's essentially the same as a Mirak being embodied, where of course you defeat him. You're the good guy defeating him, and essentially is the same as what's going on now with a lot of the whole thing with the abuse to the children that's being exposed, or how what have you. A lot of the information being exposed, and the more of that just starts to unwrite more of the essentially the figurehead or the bad guy is how he's being depicted in this. But in the end, Hermaeus Mora still kills him. It still envelops him. So it's like no deal like that will ever pan out. No consent like that will ever pan out, and that's kind of where that's characterizing. I know that was long-winded, but they were trying to touch my vocal cords as I was getting into describing the code repositories and all that. And it's they backed off as soon as what we mentioned the end of the whole contractual thing. Though they tend to not want the process to be shown the A B C D F G in there. So Ryan.
And I also think he's kind of like he also kind of shows like the dark mirror to your character.
Yes,
You're both dragonborns, but he's taken the dark, arcane path, whereas you've taken a more noble, heroic path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Where there's still a choice involved. You might have, say, the Firebrand DNA, or you may be like the Dragonborn, but you still have the choice whether to go light or dark. And that even goes back over into the regular Skyrim game with the Wolf Queen too. That was something we didn't mention with the line of Tiber Septim. She was still into necromancy and into the dark arts and everything. And it's very similar how something, even though with that DNA, could still be influenced by Orion influences, even though that would cause a schism, as we were talking about earlier in the show. There could still be Orion influences there to cause damage. And there are some with the Firebrand that actually do cause damage out there. There's some galactically that act as like what I call soul fishermen. They work on behalf of the Orions. And then also here, there are some that actually use that DNA mixed with Orion DNA to cause this weird split and schizoid type of energy. They can actually do that. So destiny doesn't mean what people think it means. It's more of a paradox, because since there's really no such thing as time, there's not really a destiny unless it's this weird trap like the Cabal contract. I call it the destiny paradox. Mm-hmm. If people get locked into that, they ride that train clear to the end. But if you're standing outside of that and you're good and balanced and actually want to do good for yourself, do good for others, then of course you're making that choice to let the true information and everything come out. But that can be, the choice is always there to corrupt that as well. That's what some people don't understand. The DNA is not necessarily a prerequisite to be superior like the Nazis think. It's more of a tool to bring in wisdom and information from the ancient past. So we call them also first waivers, where they come in to fix the energies and to lay down a certain harmonic in order to help other people gain that same information. But those people can easily have, if they choose wrong, they can actually, their soul mission can become halted or corrupted in some fashion. This is another portion to that where people don't understand. It's like, oh, doesn't a soul mission always play out? Yeah, but there's some things that can disrupt it, especially consent to things and choice here, because we're living in a realm where there's choice. So that was not factored in completely to that. One could say, well, whatever happens is still destiny. Yeah, there's a truth to that. But then also some people also say, well, you could come back in a different life and do the rest. That's also kind of true, but this is also the time of where the false reincarnation cycle ends. And you can say that your mission ends here, or you can come back and add some things later on. There's still some choice in there. And there's also exit points in which you can leave this expression as well. So it's more elaborate than people think is, destiny's solid. Destiny's solid. It's not quite as solid as people think. It's more fluid. So people have misinterpreted that. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Ryan?
Not to that. I can go into like the new races.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, definitely.
Let me see. So the first one is the Falmer, or the Snow Elves, which there's two separate looks for them. There's the degenerated cave-dwelling Falmer on the right, and the ancient regal Falmer on the left. Falmer literally just means like snow elf. They were pale and this like pale white, pretty much just like an albino version of any other elf. But how they became this is kind of a long story and has to do with the coming of the Nords to Skyrim in the first place. So, some point before recorded history, these guys broke off from normal elven culture and moved to Skyrim and adopted this sort of like light-skinned look. And the Nords originally came from across the sea to the north and into Skyrim from the continent of Atmora. And as a result, these guys gotten really threatened. At first, they let the Nords build their first settlement kind of unimpeded, just watch them. And then they realized that elves have extremely lower reproduction rates than humans. The humans could have a whole new generation of people grow up in 15 years. And they have kids a lot more often than elves do. And that threatened them, so they committed a genocide of all the Nords in Skyrim at that point, which was only one settlement, but it was a fairly large settlement at Sarthal. There was one survivor, Isgramor, the ancient Nordic hero and founder of the Companions. Isgramor sailed back to the ancient Nordic homeland of Atmora and was like, these scumbags killed all of our people with no honor, while they were asleep. We need to go get revenge. Avenge our people. So 300 of the best Nordic warriors of Atmora, as well as Isgramor and his 2 sons, set off back to Skyrim and absolutely massacre the elves. The final battle of the war took place on Solstheim, where the snow elf prince was killed by a little girl. A little Nordic girl beheaded the snow elf prince, and the few remaining snow elves that could fled to either some very sacred locations for them hidden, like the Forgotten Vale, the Chantry of Ariel. It's implied that some of them hid out other places but died off or interbred over time to the point where you just don't know what, like, they just joined the average population of different elves or something. But another sect of them appealed to the dwarves. Now, anytime the Dwemer are brought into things, it gets a bit weird. And this is no exception. They appealed to the Dwemer for sanctuary. And the Dwemer were like, yeah, we're elven cousins. Just don't pay attention to the fact that we're doing business with the Nords up on the surface. Come on, come live in our cities. We'll share our tech with you, even though we think you're a bunch of holy rollers and we don't like that. And then they fed them a fungus native to Blackreach, the subterranean Agartha-like place. And this fungus struck the snow elves blind and began to dim their mental capacity. And they enslaved the snow elves and turned them into a slave race for their own means. Over generations, the Falmer slaves, not all of them had gone blind, but like they were losing their mental capacity and going blind as generations kept eating this fungus, revolted. But at the same time, the dwarves had their business with the Dunmer, as we explained in the Morrowind video, and ceased to exist. So one day, the Falmer stormed the front lines, and all they found was empty suits of dwarven armor. So now they were left alone, and over centuries of continuing to live down there, they lost their eyesight completely. So they've gone blind. They actually don't even have eyes anymore. And turned into these corrupted, goblin-esque beings that we see here on the right, that don't even have the mental capacity anymore to even use metals that aren't brought to them. All of their equipment that they can make is made of like bug chitin and shells and things. Whereas before, this is implied to be a moonstone, which is some sort of magical stone that's been strengthened by magic and metal, essentially. And they've lost the ability to speak in any legible tongue, and they've just turned into these degenerated creatures that just like their only instinct is survive, but they're not completely like crazy and they have enough mental capacity to like kidnap people from the surface and enslave them sometimes, but it's not really clear as to like what they do with them.
That's interesting that you bring that up because in I believe it was Iceland, um, there was a story of a woman that they found naked and covered with tattoos, weird language tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she had spent 7 or 8 years underground with a group of what she called elves, white elves, that were very degenerated looking and bony. And they kept her down there for 7 or 8 years, and that they took her while she was hiking or like was camping or something like that. And she said there were a lot of other people down there that they had taken and like eaten. And this goes along with the Archontic type of thing, but they kept her down there for I don't think it was for sexual reasons. I think they kept her down there as more of like a pet or something like that. And the other times it was for sexual reasons, but she was kept down there for like a pet or something like that, or something that could serve them in some way. But what happened was I found out there was, again, this is very accurate. There was a group that was, again, this is an elven group that was also related to the Orions, very much like the Tuatha, where they were created and went to war with the Orions, and some of the other generated forms. But there was another faction after some of the, like say the giants of like Jotunheim and all that went to visit them in their grottos and everything. Oh, after the destruction of Atlantis, there was a line that shot off from them and became that degenerated another form of degenerated white skin, like tall white type of, and that would abduct people like that woman. Now, there's another form of them called Lancaneer, and they're a soldier type of tall white. And they occupy our bases, some of our bases with us and such. They're a warrior class, and they look very much like Galador over here, this white elf over here. They look like him, but with a pointier chin, like how the Falmer is on the right. They have a slightly pointier chin, and their ears are up more like the Falmer, but they have more of a refined look like him on the left. And that's another offshoot of this DNA that the Orions created as a soldier class. But the original elves that were like him on the left had more of they're more like a nature-loving race. They live in the grottos, like in Greenland. A lot of them are in Greenland, and some of them are further south into some of the Caribbean as well. But most of them are in Greenland, inside of a grotto that has like an underground river and lake system, like basically a Gartha. And they basically they revere nature, and they tend to send people positive messages every now and again. But they also warned against this other faction that's very much like the Falmer. And there is another type of race. I call these guys time thieves, and they look like Gollum from Lord of the Rings mixed with Falmer. And they feed off the energies of potentiality. Like they'll take away, like say you have an energy that is supposed to open up a lot of possibilities for you on your timeline. They would grab a hold of that, knot it on one end, and then stagnate that timeline in order to feed off the potential of what you could be. And the what ifs. What if? That's why I always say sometimes the enemy lives in the what ifs and the could be's and should have beens. Because there are some that actually exist that way. They don't look completely like the Falmer, but they're very short. They look like Gollum, but with pointy ears, and they just wear this creepy-looking loincloth. They're all bony and everything, but kind of similar. But the ones that sprang from this other elven group look pretty much like the Falmer do. And so this is very interesting, where they show them as under both groups as underground, and some actually do abduct people, either eat them or turn them into pets. So I found that very interesting that this is exactly the same.
Okay. And then the other race that is new, that is intelligent, that we can talk about are the Vampire Lords, because even though they are just vampires that have been corrupted, they are a thing in the Elder Scrolls lore, and we can talk about them because I guarantee that there's some sort of Orion creature or beast that looks like that.
Oh yeah. That's very interesting because there are some reptilian forms that look like this, and this is very interesting how they have Harken transform into this, because there are some long-skulled people that are descendant lineages of the Orion Lords and are more closely related to us. We would consider them extremely smart humans, but some of them are benevolent. But if they corrupt, they turn into something that looks like this and red and like black in color. They actually can transform their skulls split into this banana peel looking thing, very much like this form. Like, so if they fall into some kind of corruption, it's like in the game Fable as well. If you commit a lot of crimes and murders and stuff, your face starts to change.
Yeah.
That particular classification, I'm not sure if they're an in-between race between them and some of the other long-skulled innocent type of people that are more Tuathan based in some way, like that they found around Stonehenge. But like they had some of the long-skulled people there. But I believe there's like an in-between stage where there's the ones that can actually corrupt and turn into this. And there's also reptilians. I call them berserker class reptilians, or like big beasts of burden that you think of when you think of classic demons, like the big muscular orange-looking ones with the horns. There's ones that are similar, and of course you have the devil, some devil-looking ones too, with pure red skin and little horns. Some of those are more Jinn classification, but this one is more of a corrupted. One of the long skull classifications, where they can morph and change with what's known as molecular cellular solid ability, where they can corrupt, and that's usually a disconnect from any type of source energy. And they depicted this same transformation in the show Earth Final Conflict, Gene Roddenberry's Earth Final Conflict, where the alien Da'an actually gets cut off from the Talon commonality. They're basically their collective consciousness, and he turns into something that looks like this. And it's more of an in-between de-evolved stage. That was a descendant lineage of another race they called the Adipus in it, which were more like an Orion vampiric type of race. But they depicted it correctly, where if there's a disconnect with some of these beings like this, they will morph into this. And also if you go even further back, in the Orion Wars, the vampiric virus could also morph and change people into something like this. It's just like talking about in Dawnguard when the earlier vampires could do this. It is actually the same thing. The virus actually changed where we get regular-looking vampires with the regular fangs now. But an earlier infected being could turn into something like this. This is what happened to Enki and Enlil in the beginning. When they got infected, it was something very much like this, and it took them centuries in order to reclaim their original genome out of this and stay in a calm space. And they had to isolate themselves from also worship corruption, the thought forms of other people. Lucifer became something like this too. Even though he got sucked into an AI sphere at one point, when he came back out, of course, worship beings can also have all these thought forms absorbed into them and start to morph and change into this, unless they're protected by certain tunnels in Agartha that have certain rocks, and or they have certain equipment. So those are the different types of that, as far as I know.
Yep. And that's really it for like new races that are intelligent in Skyrim. Skyrim added a lot more in the way of disclosure than some of the last games, different things, but it didn't add too many new creatures and stuff to like look at, but it gave you more information about the things that you already have seen.
Oh yeah, and I enjoy Skyrim the most of all because also there, it would take too long to go into some of the other things that are going on. Maybe we could do another side show sometime on some of the other quests
Yeah.
that are in it. But there's also like with the Magic College or with like the Thieves Guild or something like that. But there also is a quest in there that what basically depicts bound beings that are ghosts that attack you, saying they don't.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing basically, and that's a depiction of a bound being. So we could do a whole other thing on this at some point in the future. We could break down each segment because
Yep.
this game is massive. So
Yeah, this game, you can put hundreds of hours into it and not finish it.
yeah, oh yeah, I could sit there. I could sit there for 2-3 days and not go through everything in that amount of time. As far as I know, also it's one of the only games that I know of that cause people to get just purely sucked into it the first like week that they got it. They had like no life that was surrounding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like one of the only games I know of that, besides all the rest of them, that really sucked people into it because it had the most disclosure also in it. I feel it had the most also concurrent disclosure along with the ancient. I've been thoroughly enjoyed this. I believe we can stop here if I'm going to see if this being wants to come through and talk about it. If he's still here, or if he's just wanting to observe. Oh, I know why you're here. Okay, this is actually, I'm going to get the name. I had it over here. I don't think he wants to channel. He was just wanting to inform that he was basically preventing this transmission from getting corrupted to make sure the energies stay calm. You don't want to channel, or did you have any new information that maybe we want to add? We've said it all. His name is Tukatik, and he's
Cool.
of the Kazatul. And are you royalty class, or are you like a warrior class type? Well, more of a warrior. He looks like a cat in the face, but he's essentially a dragon. He has wings, and some of them, all cats and dragons are related, like lions and all that are related. Lyrans and dragons are essentially related. Lyrans are essentially an offshoot of Kazatul. And what is it that you wanted to inform? You don't want to channel? No. Okay. I'm keep asking if he wants to do that. I think he would put himself at risk doing this. What did you want to say to the population? Okay. Look more closely at your literature. Look more closely at your history. And look more closely at your supposed fiction, is what he's saying. Look extremely closely at things like this. They pertain to now more than some people think. And if you're drawn to this, don't let ridiculers tell you that it's nonsense. He's saying, don't let people try to pull you away from that. That's just people trying to pull you away from the history of where you came from in some instances, your origins. Though sometimes history can be corrupted. Your own is important, but the now moment, all of this culminating in the now moment is important, is what he's saying. Okay, he's talking in quantum very quickly so that I can actually pick up on that. So Tukatik, thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to say? There were a lot of interferences, of course, with this today. Yeah, and I can see there's something trying to buzz around you even. There was some kind of weird spider-looking thing that he was grabbing hold of, but he looks like a big, like a house cat with wings, and he's dark purple, and he has a cat face, but with like scales that come up along the sides of his head, and he has dragon scales around the eyes and everything. And also, on a side note, he said, remember, cat power rules, he says. Okay, yeah. And also, what is it? Wait a minute, is Isaac here too? Okay. Yeah, I thought I heard him a little bit ago. Okay. What is it you want to say? You can't channel either? Just a short message. Really? Okay. He's just dicking around. He came in just to say I'm a dumbass. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. He does this. He can. He got cut off, but he can come in for little blips every now and again. He can come in for little blips. So they're not totally gone. It's just that he's not being allowed to stay here with us. What is it you actually wanted to actually say other than that? He's just saying we're on the right track. Keep it up. It's actually grounding certain bits of information that are opening up other areas, like informational areas, and it's being grounded as we walk, as we speak, and as we compare. This is why the Orions were not wanting the Aurora's people and that history to become one bridge like that, because it was creating a new informational conduit is what it was doing as we were talking about it. They did not want that. So I understand that, guys. Thank you. You have to all leave now? Okay, yeah, I wanted to have them say it, but it was apparently they don't think it's the right energy for that. But yeah, thank you, guys. I appreciate that. So unless you have anything else to say, I believe we can call it now, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. Just keep it get out there if you haven't yet. Try see if you can find anything in games that to bring out too.
Yeah, that we don't even know about. Try to point out something that you may be educated on. You know, like another bit of history you might be educated on that you see in there. Bring it up. Even put it in the comments of the shows we've been doing. We're going to continue on with Elder Scrolls Online. We will go into the Fallout series eventually, and go into other sci-fi stuff like Star Wars, things of that nature. But
yeah. I'm hoping we can do a Witcher one sometime.
Oh yeah, Witcher would be fantastic. Love that. You know, but that could be one of the next ones we do after Elder Scrolls, even. So, thank you everybody for watching this. I know this was quite long, but this was actually fun for us. Hopefully you enjoy this. So, bye bye everybody.
Bye.